Hi guys, today we're going to be discussing three topics in exercise phys. We have the Valsalva maneuver, muscle adaptations, and then delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS for short. These three concepts are really important for understanding how the body responds to and how it recovers from exercise, especially when it comes to strength training. All right, so part one, the Valsalva maneuver. What is the Valsalva maneuver? So the definition is a forceful exhaltation against a closed airway, um, which is like holding your breath or closing your glottis. Think of like holding your breath and you're about to brace to lift a really heavy object. It's something we do naturally when lifting weights, or even whenever you're coughing, or whenever you use the restroom. It's really important for strength training, for stabilizing the spine, but it also has significant cardiovascular effects. So there are four different phases of the Valsalva maneuver. Phase one, two, three, and four. Pressure buildup, decrease venous return, release, and return to baseline. There are four different phases. So starting with phase one, that is going to be the start of the strains. So that's whenever you're taking your breath, about to strain, increase pressure in your chest. Your heart is trying to squeeze blood into like a really tightly compressed space. Um, the initial breath to bear down and forcefully exhale against your closed glottis. Phase two is going to be reduced venous return, dropping in blood pressure. So as you continue to hold your breath and strain, venous return to the heart is reduced just a little bit because of the ongoing pressure that's happening. Your heart rate's going to rise to maintain homeostasis. So we have phase one is the beginning of it, and then phase two is continuous strain. Phase three is going to be the release of that breath. And this is when most people who aren't really educated on it are going to start to get lightheaded or dizzy and pass out. Um, but everything is going to start to open back up and going to return to normal because nothing's compressed anymore or under pressure. So that's the beginning of your breath, continuous hold, and then the release. So phase four is when everything so blood pressure rebounds and your heart rate is going to return to a stable rate. So understanding these phases, you're going to see both benefits and risks, especially for people with heart conditions. And in some cases, the Valsalva maneuver can aid in cardiac episodes. So me personally, I have been diagnosed with SVT and with POTS. So I was taught the Valsalva maneuver whenever I was really young as a way to get my heart back into a regular rhythm. So my heart rate can get, whenever I'm just sitting down, not doing anything, my heart rate can still be up to like 120, which is supposed to be my maximum heart rate whenever I'm working out. And so I use that as a way to control everything and bring it back down to the baseline. So next we have the physiological effects of the Valsalva maneuver. So we have the intra-abdominal pressure, effects on venous return, heart rate, and blood pressure, and then the risk factors. So when we perform the Valsalva, intra-abdominal and intrathoracic pressure rises. This can help stabilize the spine and also improve force transmission, but it can also reduce blood return to the heart temporarily, which is what causes that dizziness or fainting in some people. Blood pressure can also spike significantly, which is why it's not always the safest for everyone. So that's why they always say, know what you're doing if you're going to do it. And then last but not least, we have using the Valsalva during resistance training. So why the lifters used it, and then proper and improper usage and when to avoid it. So in the gym, lots of lifters use the Valsalva to help protect their spine during heavy compound lifts like squats or deadlifts. Um, why do they use it? It increases your trunk stiffness and your core stability whenever you're trying to go through the motions of doing that lift. Proper versus improper, you need to really be educated on using it. We're going to show you why in the next slide. Like I said before, dizziness and fainting. That's like the biggest thing. You're going to injure yourself if you don't know how to do it and when to avoid it. People with high blood pressure, hypertension, or cardiovascular issues should avoid it or modify their breathing techniques unless told otherwise. So for me, if I wasn't told how to do it the correct way, I probably wouldn't be doing it at all. So now we have two different videos for you. We have one showing improper usage first, and then we have one showing proper usage. I'm gonna play them.
You can see he held his breath entirely too long at the end, and it just caught up to him.
Hmm.
And here is a video of me actually doing this when I was in senior in high school. I'm gonna play it like this, but it's kind of this wide view. And I also have on a weight training belt, which kind of helps as well. But most people aren't really educated on using those. But I also, as you can see right here, my cheeks are kind of, I exhaled right when I got to the top, set it back down.
Yeah.
There we go. Moving on.
All right.
All right.
Come on.
Now we are moving on to DOMS. So we're done with Valsalva. So what is DOMS? DOMS stands for delayed onset muscle soreness. And it's typically seen as muscle pain and stiffness that usually sets in anywhere between 12 to 24 hours after any strenuous exercise or activity, with the worst coming after the first day, lasting anywhere from 1 to 3 days. Um, DOMS causes, they vary with unfamiliar or intense exercise, but especially show with eccentric loading, like the lowering phase of a squat. Symptoms include soreness, stiffness, and reduced strength. It's a normal response, not necessarily a bad one. So a lot of people, they'll go to the gym and say, "Oh, I'm so sore, like that wasn't a good workout." Not true a lot of the time. Eccentric movements such as downhill exercises and lowering weights, that's that part of it. But so I'm also a dance teacher, and whenever I first learned about DOMS, because I had no clue what it was like a year ago, I was completely clueless. And so whenever I first learned about it, and my girls would come in sore after they'd be running track or doing cheer, whatever at school, they'd come into the studio and they'd be so sore from doing their workouts at school. But and they're like, "Ugh, I just didn't work out very good today. Like I need to really like stretch whatever." It's not because you didn't have a good workout. It's because you had a good workout and you just aren't used to it yet. You're building your muscle. All right, so now we're moving on to the theories behind DOMS. So there are several theories trying to explain DOMS, starting with the microtrauma theory, which is going to be teeny tiny little tears in your muscle fibers. It sounds like it hurts really bad. Inflammatory response, that's going to be immune cells rushing in, causing swelling and pain. And then we have enzyme leakage and calcium buildup that also contribute to muscle soreness. On the last slide, we had lactic acid. So a lot of people think that lactic acid buildup is the main cause of DOMS. Um, while it causes muscle pain, that's not the sole reason why. So that's kind of like a myth of DOMS.
A misconception, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so now moving on, last part, we have managing and preventing DOMS. So warm up, progressive overload, recovery strategies, and the use of massages, foam rolling, cold therapy. Um, DOMS isn't really something that you can prevent from happening. It's more so something that you manage and reduce the symptoms of. So warming up the right way is always something that I stress so much to my girls. Um, Before we even start anything at the beginning of class, we stretch 15 minutes. That's You don't want to go into your workout thinking you only have to stretch for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or not even stretching at all. And then you're just going to go pull heavy weight and not feel sore afterwards. That's not something you want to go into your workout thinking. So you need to stretch and warm up the right way. And you also need to stretch and warm up for the right amount of time. Time is like the main thing to get your body feeling warmed up. The next is going to be gradual progress. So you want to uh, work your way up your training in volume and intensity so that your muscles adapt to it. You don't want to just load everything on your body at once. That's not good for your body. We have active recovery, like light cardio or stretching that can help. Stretching is my main thing. I always talk about stretching all day, every day. That's what's really going to help with your symptoms. Another thing is like eating the right food, balanced diet, and then getting the right amount of rest after you've worked out. And then last, we have foam rolling and massages, cold therapy. They may reduce symptoms. It just really depends on the person. Like it varies. For some people, it may work really, really well. Other people, it may not work at all. So that's just one of the things that just depends.
Alrighty, moving on to muscle adaptations with, sorry, moving on to muscle adaptations with learning how to fully understand the Valsalva maneuver and delayed onset muscle soreness. We have our overload and specificity principles, which overload muscles, they have to be stressed in order to adapt. You can't really stay at the same level and you grow muscle. So for that muscle adaptation to occur, we have to follow those specific rules. So overload, challenging our muscles to do what we need them to do and build those. And it's like make sure you have variability with your intensity, how long you work out, what exercises you're doing, and so on and so forth, how often you are actually engaging those muscles within your workout, within a certain split. So your specificity would be your hypertrophy or your endurance training, your resistance bands, strength training. We have our gradual increases in our load training, of course, and then we have the 2 for 2 rule. When you exceed those 2 rep range, we always kind of have to stay in that rep range when we work out. And once you exceed those two, then it's at that point in time where you have to increase the load, depending on what you're doing and what you're working for. So endurance, you would increase the rep range, and hypertrophy and strength training, resistance training, you would increase the load or the weight. Moving on to cellular mechanisms. So we have our mechanical stress that activates our signaling pathway. So when you lift and back and forth, those are those connections between your muscle fibers and your enzymes and your neural pathways. You have the satellite cells, which donate the nuclei that contributes to protein synthesis. And then after that, we have our myofibrils that multiply in that fiber cross section area, make you look swole, give you big. And then we have our type 2 fibers that are fast twitch fibers that activate faster while you're working out. So we have our muscle adaptations that depend entirely on the type of training that you do, such as your strength resistance training, your endurance or aerobic training, or your power and speed training. So with hypertrophy, it primarily includes just increased protein synthesis, with your muscle fibers, and then mechanical load that activates those pathways that I was talking about earlier. And then the more nuclei you have and contribute to those, it's gonna overall increase the amount that you have in your body, which makes you look bigger. You kind of have it, but those are responsible for the power and the strength that you have. Next, we have our hormone influence on muscle growth. So we have our anabolic hormones, and anabolic is without, usually just without air and stuff like that. So we have our testosterone, our GH hormones, and our IGF-1 hormones, and we have our stimuli hormones that go against with muscle strength and force generation. We have our, I don't really know how to pronounce this word. I've been kind of, it's like what, pregulation? Is that right? Yeah. I honestly, I've been sitting here. But so we have those, and what it gets with increased sensitivity. And we have our resistance trainings, which overall enhances that hormone release and makes you act a little faster. So we have that resistance training that triggers that hormone response that drives muscle growth, like testosterone growth, stuff like that, in response to your heavy loading and your muscle stretch. So these hormones will enter that muscle cell and activate that signaling pathway in order for protein synthesis. So we see increased hormone receptor sensitivity over time with your resistance training, meaning your muscles become more responsive to the signals that they're getting. So pick up the weight, setting it down, stuff like that. Your endurance training, allows for like a more increased mitochondrial density and capillary capillaries per muscle fiber with your greater enzyme activity and your better glucose storage. So over time, as you work out and as you continue to progress through your journey, your body gets more adapted towards that, and you end up like me, swollen and not tired all the time. We go on to the next one. So we have our structural and functional adaptations. So that's our long-term muscle adaptations like hypertrophy, increased muscle fiber diameter, the increased mitochondria and capillary density that I mentioned in the previous slide. We have our stronger tendons and connective tissue. That's you just building up your body over time to withstand the force that you're putting on it, as well as your increased force production and fatigue resistance to make you feel better over time. So it not only leads to bigger muscles, but a better body that can improve and handle those really well. So we see that with the mitochondria and capillary networks that build up over time. They just help your combined strength and your endurance work. So your connective tissue, like your tendons, become stronger, all of your ligaments, your bones, calcium intake. But ultimately, this makes trained muscles more powerful and resistant to fatigue. So a track star is going to have greater legs, but they probably won't have a greater upper body. Vice versa with bodybuilders and pole vaulters and whatever sport you play. So, but that tension, that muscle damage, and that metabolic stress leads to more myofibers per muscle fiber, increase actin and myosin in your proteins, and thicker muscle fibers, especially in the areas which you train, which go with those individual sports and activities that you do all the time. So connecting those dots, we have how the Valsalva maneuver, muscle adaptation, we have delayed onset muscle soreness, interrelated with training, and then we have like just a bunch of examples as to how all of those things differ when you work out in different like rep ranges and stuff like that. So we have picture somebody you have that's new to lifting and they're doing heavy squats. So they use the Valsalva maneuver for core stability and resistance airflow. The muscles adapting over time with that increased strength and uh, hypertrophy. And then they likely experience, most people, if you work out, are going to experience that delayed onset muscle soreness after the first few sessions. And honestly, throughout the rest of your workout journey, but as you adapt to that, it's going to become less effective on you and less painful, I say, to deal with, less annoying. But these processes, they all work together in the human body to produce positive training effects that we aim for when we're working out. So on to our last couple slides. I think this might be one of our last ones. So the Valsalva maneuver, like I said, it's very productive, very useful, but at the same time, it's also a risky technique because when you go through and hold your breath, you cut off all of your airways, direct pathways to your brain, and you're risking that passing out, how we saw in that last video. But in my video, as you can see, even with the weight belt, perfect exhale at the right time, and then continue, and you ended up yanking that weight up pretty easy. So it's great for bracing, but if you don't pay attention to what you're doing and the proper specifics for it, you can really end up hurting yourself. So with our muscle adaptations, just learning how to actually use all of that and move on. Those are the key aspects to how to progress your body and how it differs based on whatever training variables you're at. But moving on to delayed onset muscle soreness, that is a natural part of the body's adaptation process, but can be managed with consistency over time and making sure that you're getting the right amount of sleep, rest, and just working out in moderation and not just trying to go in there and kill yourself every day. But understanding all of these, it makes it a lot easier and a lot smarter for us to train, how we coach others, even as players, how we help our peers, our athletes, and recover more effectively over time. just to be the best kind of person we can be. And going on, I think we might be a little short, but this PowerPoint, to me, it helps even just going back over it, even though I've already learned it, you know what I'm saying? But I hope this PowerPoint was able to help you better understand the topics that we covered from Unit 2, whether it's about breathing, the Valsalva maneuver, the late onset muscle soreness, what training strategies you're using, and just dealing with your soreness and how to overall feel better after training.